You are scrolling through blurry live stream footage of a man biting a cop's throat out when the comments flood with laughing emojis and fake news hashtags. The stench of burning tires from downtown seeping through your cracked window as sirens warp into screams 6 blocks away. Your phone buzzing with emergency alerts that vanish before you can read them. The streetlights flickering to expose silhouettes dragging something heavy through the intersection. The neighbors' TVs all tuned to different news channels reporting contained riots, while their porch cameras show shadows scaling fences like spiders. The taste of copper in your mouth as you realize every barking dog on your block just went silent at once. The weight of your dead sister's paramedic badge in your pocket as you finally recognize the pattern. The way the infected move in perfect sync, like a single mind controlling broke. Day 1 I was just scrolling through my phone on the couch when the videos started popping up. They were everywhere: Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. At first, I figured they were pranks. You know, the usual internet nonsense. People stumbling around like zombies covered in fake blood. I actually laughed at one of them. It looked like someone had gone way overboard with Halloween makeup. But then another one showed up. And another. The comments were all the same. Is this real? What's happening? Where is this? Zoe was sitting next to me, half watching some reality show, when I nudged her and showed her my phone. Check this out, I said. She glanced at it, rolled her eyes, and went back to her show. People are so desperate for clicks, she muttered. But here's the thing, the videos kept coming, and they weren't just in one place. Different cities, different countries. The people in them weren't acting. They moved wrong, like their bodies didn't work right. And the noises they made, guttural, almost animalistic. It wasn't just creepy, it was off. I couldn't stop watching. Zoe noticed me scrolling faster, my thumb flicking up nervously. What's wrong? She asked. I handed her the phone. Look at this one, I said. It was a live stream from somewhere in Europe. The camera was shaky, but you could see them, dozens of them, maybe more. They weren't running or lunging like in the movies. They were slow, deliberate, and they didn't stop. The person holding the camera was screaming, begging for help. Then the screen went black. Zoe stared at the phone for a second, then handed it back to me. Okay, that's messed up, she said, but she still didn't seem worried. It's probably some ARG or something, she added, referring to those alternate reality games people do online. I wanted to believe her, but something about it felt wrong. Too coordinated. Too real. Then the power went out. It wasn't just my apartment, the whole building, the whole block. I looked out the window and the streetlights were dark. Cars were honking, people were shouting. My phone buzzed, a notification from the power company. Service interruption due to unforeseen circumstances. Unforeseen circumstances. That's not exactly reassuring. Zoe stood up and started pacing. This is weird, she said. I nodded, but I was already thinking ahead. If this was something serious, we weren't ready. I had a respirator from a DIY project I'd done last year, but the filter was only at 70%. And my sidearm, I'd forgotten to reload it after the last time I went to the range. One live round. That's it. And here's the problem. In most apocalypse movies, the characters just grab their stuff and go. But real life isn't like that. You don't have a pre-packed bug-out bag sitting by the door. You don't have a fully stocked pantry. You don't even know where your flashlight is. I started opening drawers looking for anything useful. Batteries, a multi-tool, my old camping gear. Zoe watched me, her arms crossed. You're overreacting, she said, but I could tell she wasn't sure. Then we heard the sirens, not just one or two, dozens. They were close, maybe a few blocks away. I went to the window and saw flashing lights reflecting off the buildings. Police cars, ambulances, fire trucks. And people. Lots of people. They were running. Not like they were late for something. Running like their lives depended on it. We need to go, I said, turning to Zoe. She shook her head. Go where? It's probably just a riot or something. But I wasn't convinced. The videos, the power outage, the sirens, it was too much. And here's the thing nobody talks about. In a crisis, hesitation gets you killed. Every second you spend debating whether it's real is a second you could have used to get ahead of it. I grabbed my respirator and checked the filter. 70%, not great, but better than nothing. I stuffed it into my backpack along with the few supplies I'd gathered. Zoe was still standing there, watching me like I'd lost my mind. Come on, I said. We need to move. That's when we heard the screams. They were faint at first, muffled by the distance. But then they got louder, closer. I went to the window again and saw them, people, or what used to be people, shambling down the street. They moved like the ones in the videos, their bodies jerking unnaturally, and they were surrounded. People were trying to fight them off, but it wasn't working. They just kept coming. "Zoe," I said, my voice low. She finally came to the window and looked out. Her face went pale. "Oh my God," she whispered. And here's the thing that makes it worse. In movies, zombies are slow and stupid. Easy to outrun, easy to outsmart. But these things, they didn't stop. They didn't get tired, and they didn't seem to feel pain. I watched one take a hit from a bat and keep going like nothing happened. "We need to go," I said again, grabbing Zoe's arm. She didn't argue this time. But here's the next problem. Where do you go in a situation like this? The streets were chaos. The buildings weren't safe. And we didn't have a car. I thought about the subway, but that was probably worse. Underground, enclosed spaces, no way. So we did the only thing we could think of. We went up. The roof was empty, thankfully, but it didn't feel safe. It felt exposed. I could hear the chaos below, screams, sirens, the occasional gunshot. Zoe was shaking. "What do we do now?" she asked. I didn't have an answer. And here's the kicker. Most apocalypse movies never show the waiting. The uncertainty. The not knowing what's coming next. We were stuck there with no plan, no supplies, and no idea how bad it was going to get. That's when I realized something else. The respirator I had, it wasn't just for smoke or chemicals. It was for airborne pathogens. And if this was some kind of outbreak, we were already too late. But that's a problem for later. Right now, we just had to survive the night. Day 1, the lab. I should have known something was wrong the second we stepped inside. The lab's airlock was already open, and the emergency lights were flickering. Not the usual power-saving mode, but the kind of flicker that says something tripped the system. Marcus had sent us a garbled message about a breach, but he hadn't answered any follow-ups. That alone was a red flag. Marcus always answered. Zoe and I moved slow, respirators on, but mine was already down to 70% filtration. Not great when you're walking into a potential biohazard zone. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not rot, not blood, but this sharp chemical stink mixed with something organic, like bleach and spoiled meat. Most apocalypse movies never show how labs actually smell when things go wrong. It's not just, oh no, zombies. It's the little details that tell you how bad it is before you even see the bodies. The hallway was empty, but the floor was sticky. Not with blood, at least not yet, but with some kind of fluid, clear with streaks of yellow. I didn't touch it, but I didn't need to. The containment doors ahead were jammed open, not broken, not forced, jammed, like something had wedged them that way on purpose. Zoe pointed to the security panel. The screen was cracked, but still readable. Containment breach, patient 0 status, escaped. That's when the first body came into view. It was one of the lab techs slumped against the wall. No visible wounds, no blood, just dead. But the way his head was tilted, the way his mouth hung open, it wasn't natural. His skin was gray, waxy. And his eyes, they were clouded over like someone had poured milk into them. Zoe checked his pulse. Nothing. Then his neck twitched. We both jumped back. The body didn't move again, but that was enough. I'd seen enough zombie movies to know where this was going. But here's the thing they never show. Real bodies don't just sit up like in the films. They twitch first. Little muscle spasms, like the system's rebooting. We didn't stick around to find out. The next room was worse. The containment cells were all open, not just unlocked, ripped open. The metal doors were bent outward, like something had pushed its way out. And the glass, the reinforced observation windows were shattered but not from the outside, from the inside That's when I realized patient 0 wasn't some slow, shambling corpse. It was strong enough to break out of a sealed lab. Zoe found Marcus's workstation. His computer was still on, screen frozen on a security feed. I hit play. The footage showed a containment cell. A figure inside, humanoid but asterisk wrong asterisk. Too tall, too thin, limbs just a little too long. It was pacing. Then it stopped. Turned asterisk straight asterisk at the camera. An asterisk smiled asterisk. Not a human smile, too wide, too many teeth. The feed cut to another angle, the hallway outside the cells. The thing was asterisk fast asterisk. Not running, not sprinting, just asterisk moving asterisk like it didn't bother with steps. It reached the door. Then it asterisk pushed asterisk. The metal groaned. The alarms blared. And then nothing. Feed ended. That's when we heard the noise. A asterisk thud asterisk from down the hall. Not a footstep, not a voice. Just a asterisk thud asterisk like something heavy hitting the floor. Zoe looked at me. I had one round left in my sidearm. One, and whatever was in here, I doubted a single bullet would stop it. We backed toward the exit. Then the power went out. Total darkness. The emergency lights didn't come back on. That's when the asterisk breathing asterisk started. Not ours, not human. Something asterisk wet asterisk, something asterisk rasping asterisk right at the edge of hearing. Close, too close. I grabbed Zoe's arm, we moved. The exit was 20 feet away. The breathing got louder. Then the asterisk laughing asterisk started, soft, giggling like a kid playing hide and seek. We ran, the door was still open. We slammed it shut behind us. No locks, no barricade, just a flimsy metal door between us and whatever was in there. We didn't stop moving until we were back in the car. That's when I checked my phone. Marcus had sent one last message. 2 words, asterisk asterisk IT learns. Asterisk asterisk, and that's when the real horror set in. Because zombies aren't supposed to be smart. They're not supposed to asterisk laugh asterisk, but this one did. And it was still out there. Asterisk asterisk day 2. The quarantine failed asterisk asterisk. I realized the quarantine was a total loss the moment I looked out the window and saw the smoke. It wasn't the kind of smoke you get from a controlled burn or a flare stack. This was thick, oily, and rising in columns that told me the city's infrastructure was breaking down. From up here, downtown didn't look like a disaster zone. It looked like an anthill that had just been struck by a boot. Cars were scattered in the middle of intersections, doors thrown open, drivers gone, and the noise. Movies never really capture how directional panic is. You don't just hear a wall of sound. You hear exactly where the worst of it is coming from, and right then it was shifting our way. Zoe grabbed my arm, breaking my trance, and pointed toward the lab's parking structure. "The car," she said. "We need the car." It sounded like a solid plan on paper, but then the logistics kicked in. The garage was underground, and the power grid had been flickering like a dying light bulb all morning. That's the thing about catastrophic events. They are never single-point failures. They are cascades. No power meant no ventilation down there, and more importantly, no lights. We were looking at stumbling through a pitch-black concrete box with who knows what waiting in the shadows. But staying put wasn't a choice anymore. The lab's emergency channel had gone dead an hour ago. Just a loop of static now. Official comms were silent. The gunshots echoing from the streets weren't the rhythmic, disciplined bursts of riot police. They were erratic, sporadic, and desperate. That was the turning point for me. I realized then that the quarantine hadn't just failed, it had collapsed. We weren't waiting for rescue, we were running out of time. We hit the stairwell, respirators strapped to our faces. I checked my gauge, 70% filtration remaining. That sounds like a safety cushion, but when you stop and do the math on the particulate saturation in the air, it's not. At this exposure rate, I had maybe 2 hours before I was essentially breathing through a coffee filter. Zoe was in worse shape. She'd torn the seal on her unit yesterday trying to adjust it in a panic. We were on a clock and the timer was ticking faster than I wanted to admit. The stairwell itself told a story. It wasn't empty. It wasn't quiet. Someone had come through here recently, blood smeared on the handrail, still wet enough to catch the dim light. And the footprints, hundreds of them, mostly heading down. Usually in a disaster, you follow the crowd. Safety in numbers, right. But there's a critical mass in every crisis where the crowd becomes a bigger liability than the threat itself. They were running toward the exit, but they were also blocking it. We pushed through the door to the garage level and it was just black. No emergency LEDs, no exit signs, just the void. I could hear engines idling somewhere in the distance, maybe shouting, maybe just the acoustics of the building playing tricks on me. I pulled out my phone, 1 bar of battery. That's another survival reality. Nobody prepares you for how quickly your technology turns into dead weight. No signal, no internet, just a dying LED and the sudden, crushing awareness that every percentage point of charge was now a literal lifeline. Our car was parked 3 rows down, 50 feet of open concrete, easy, until I heard it. A heavy, wet thud from the next aisle over. Something was moving between the vehicles. It wasn't running. It wasn't walking with any purpose. It was lurching. Zoe froze beside me. I knew exactly what was going through her head because it was going through mine. We'd both seen the grainy footage circulating online before the networks went dark. People moving with mechanics that didn't make sense. Limbs too loose, eyes too wide. I checked my sidearm. 1 round in the chamber. 1. That's it. And here is the massive problem with firearms in a real-world outbreak scenario. Movies lie about the noise. Firing a gun in an enclosed concrete garage doesn't just make a bang, it creates a shockwave. If I pulled that trigger, every infected thing within a half-mile radius wasn't just going to hear it. They were going to triangulate our position instantly. The gun was almost more danger than it was worth. We crouched behind a pickup truck, listening. The movement continued, closer now. Then came a sound that turned my blood to ice, a wet, ragged, gasping intake of breath from something that biologically shouldn't have needed air anymore. Zoe clamped her hand over her own mouth. It was a smart reflex. We had reached a point where even the act of breathing was too loud. The car was 50 feet away, keys were in my pocket, but as I scanned the path I hit the next logistical nightmare. The garage gate was down. With the grid dead, the automatic opener was a paperweight. That meant we'd have to find the manual release and crank it open by hand. That takes time. It makes noise. And it requires standing in the open while things that want to kill you are already in the room with you. I ran the scenarios in my head. Go back up. The lab was compromised. The streets were a war zone. The car was the only viable exit, but getting to it meant crossing a kill zone with 0 cover. And that's when I saw the second problem. A shadow slumped against the driver's side door of our car. It was motionless. For the moment, Zoe nudged me and mouthed a single word, *distraction*. She pointed to a wall-mounted service alarm. The kind that triggers a deafening siren if you pull it. It was a suicide mission. But staying here was just suicide with a delay. I nodded. I didn't like it, but I didn't have a better play. She broke cover and sprinted for the alarm. And that's when I learned the most important rule of this new world. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. The second she moved, the thing slumped by our car didn't just stand up. It twisted. Its movement was unnatural, fast, predatory. It was on her before she even reached the wall. The alarm never got pulled. Neither did Zoe. I'm not going to describe what happened next. You don't need that image in your head. But while it was distracted, I moved. I got to the car. I got the engine started. I found the manual crank and forced the gate up just enough to scrape the roof as I drove under it. I accelerated out of the tunnel and into a city that didn't belong to us anymore. I had 1 round left in the gun. My respirator was ticking down to 0, and I was alone. The realization hit me like a physical weight. This was the end of the world as we knew it, and the terrifying part, it was only day 2. Day 2 downtown subway tunnels. I didn't realize how bad the air quality would actually be until we were already underground. The respirators helped, obviously, but the filters were clogging fast. I checked the gauge, and we were down to 70% capacity. And that was before we even hit the real smoke. The plan was simple. Use the subway tunnels as a straight shot under the city to reach the rumored safe zone. But here's the issue nobody mentioned. The tunnels were actively collapsing. The first warning sign was the dust, and I don't mean the usual layer of grime you find in a subway station. This was thick, heavy, like powdered concrete suspended in the air, just swirling in our flashlight beams. Every single step we took kicked up more of it, and I could physically feel it coating the inside of my mask. Zoe kept tapping her wristband, trying to get a CO2 reading, but the thing had been glitching out since the power grid failed 2 days ago. Marcus was a few yards ahead, testing every section of the track before he put his weight on it. It's funny, in most apocalypse movies the underground structures are perfectly intact, but in reality when maintenance stops, things fall apart fast. Pipes burst, supports rust through, and suddenly you aren't just running from the infected, you're dodging cave-ins. We stumbled onto the first body near a service hatch. It wasn't one of the infected, just a guy in a maintenance uniform, half buried under a pile of debris. His radio was still clipped to his chest, crackling with static, playing some automated emergency loop on repeat. Evacuate immediately. Great advice in hindsight. I checked his pockets for anything useful, but he was just carrying a waterlogged notepad and a heavy set of keys. Marcus took the keys. You never know when a random key might save your life, right? That was when we heard the groaning. It wasn't human, not even close. It was this wet, guttural sound like something was tearing itself apart just to make noise. And the worst part, it was coming from both directions. Zoe grabbed my arm and pointed down the tunnel. I saw the shadows shifting in the dark, not running, not stumbling, but sliding. The infected didn't care about the unstable ground. They didn't care that the dust was choking their lungs. They just kept coming. That's when the reality of our situation really hit me. I checked my sidearm. I had 1 round left. 1. That's another thing the movies get wrong. How fast you actually run out of ammo when you aren't an action hero with infinite magazines. Marcus had a crowbar, Zoe had a fire extinguisher, and I had a single bullet between us and whatever was closing in. We ran. The tunnel branched ahead and Marcus veered left toward an emergency stairwell. The sign above it was flickering, but I could just make out the words surface access. That sounded like a win until I realized the stairs were blocked by a twisted metal gate. Marcus jammed the maintenance keys into the lock, but the mechanism was rusted shut. Meanwhile, that groaning was getting louder. Zoe didn't hesitate. She slammed the fire extinguisher against the gate's hinges. Once, twice. On the third hit, something gave way. We forced it open just wide enough to squeeze through. The infected were right there now, close enough that I could see their hands clawing at the edges of our flashlight beams. Their fingers were broken, bent at wrong angles, but it didn't slow them down one bit. The stairwell led up to a service corridor, then another set of stairs. My legs were burning, and my respirator was sucking in more dust than actual air. The filter gauge was down to maybe 50% now, and every breath tasted like metal and rot. Zoe was wheezing behind me and Marcus was bleeding from a cut on his forehead where a piece of debris had clipped him. We hit the next landing and froze. The door at the top wasn't just locked, it was barricaded from the other side. Furniture, pipes, chunks of concrete, someone had sealed this place tight. And that's when I noticed the scratches. Deep grooves in the metal, like something had tried to claw its way out. Marcus started pulling at the barricade, but it wasn't moving. The infected were still coming up the stairs behind us. I looked at my gun again, still 1 bullet. 1. Zoe grabbed my shoulder and pointed up toward a ventilation grate near the ceiling. It looked small, barely big enough for a child, but maybe we could squeeze through. The problem, we had no tools to pry it open, and absolutely no time to think. Marcus wedged the crowbar into the grate's edge and leaned his entire body weight into it. The metal screamed, but finally it gave way just as the first infected reached the landing. We shoved Zoe through first, then Marcus. I went last, kicking back at the hands that were grabbing at my ankles. The grate snapped shut behind me, and for a split second I actually thought we were safe. Then I heard the banging. The infected weren't stopping. They were throwing themselves against the grate, over and over, and the screws were starting to loosen. We crawled through the vent, blind, coughing, with absolutely no idea where it led. The metal shook under us with every impact from below. And that's the thing about safe zones. They are only safe until they are not. Day 3, abandoned hospital. Day 3. I knew we were screwed the second we stepped inside. The hospital doors were shattered, glass crunching under our boots, but that wasn't the real warning sign. It was the smell. Not rot, not old blood, disinfectant. Strong, antiseptic, like someone had just finished mopping. In an apocalypse, you don't clean up unless you're trying to hide something. And that meant someone had been here recently, covering their tracks. We moved slow, piecing the corners. Our respirators were already clogging fast, down to 70% filter life, and the downtown air was a thick cocktail of concrete dust and whatever else was cooking out there. Every breath felt like inhaling sandpaper. Marcus took point, which in theory should have been fine. He was ex-military, always steady, always the guy you wanted watching your back. Until he wasn't. I didn't see the bite at first. He was just moving a little stiff, keeping his right arm tucked tight against his side like it was bruised or sore. My first thought was that he'd banged it up during the subway collapse a few hours back. It was plausible, but then I noticed his sleeve. It was stuck to his forearm, dark and wet, too thick for sweat, too dark for the water we'd been rationing. It had that specific, syrupy quality. Here's the thing about bites. Every movie, every book has their own version. A slow, dramatic turn, a raging fever, maybe some emotional goodbye. Reality is a lot messier. It's a biological process, and like any infection, it's unpredictable. Some people turn fast, 8 hours, maybe less. Some take days. Some don't turn at all. Their body just goes into septic shock and they die screaming from the infection. Marcus. He was sweating buckets, but his voice was still level when he said, "We need supplies. Keep moving." That calmness, that focus on the mission when he was clearly hurting, that's when I knew he was hiding it. The hospital itself was a problem. It was picked clean, but not in a chaotic way. There were no meds, no bandages, not even a single loose piece of gauze in the drawers. The real issue wasn't the lack of supplies, though. It was the asterisk organization asterisk. The shelves were neatly emptied, the cabinets left ajar, not ransacked. This wasn't looted. It was asterisk, methodically stripped asterisk. That's disciplined behavior. Military or someone with a plan who knew exactly what they'd need for the long haul. And if they'd been here recently enough for the disinfectant smell to linger, it meant they were still nearby. Marcus started to fall back. Just a few steps at first, enough that I had to consciously slow my own pace. I figured he was covering our six, being tactical. Then I saw him bring his hand up to his mouth. A quick, casual wipe. It came away red. Most people think the worst part of a bite is the turning itself. It's not. The worst part is the asterisk waiting asterisk. It's the math you're forced to do in your head. How many hours do I have? Is he a risk right now, or can I afford to wait? Is he still my friend, or is he just a countdown? I checked my sidearm. 1 round left in the magazine. 1. That's not a number that allows for mistakes. We were pushing for the 3rd floor when Marcus finally stumbled. Just for a second he caught himself on the wall, but his fingers left dark, sticky smears on the paint. Not fresh blood. It was thicker, already starting to clot. That's when the timeline in my head just broke. He hadn't been bitten in here. He'd been bitten asterisk before asterisk we ever got to the hospital. I replayed the last few hours. The subway tunnels. That moment he'd gone ahead to scout a collapsed section. Come back breathing a little too hard. Said it was all clear. He'd lied. He'd been bit then. Which meant we'd been walking with him, trusting him for hours. And every minute the clock was ticking down. And here's something no one tells you until you live it. The sicker they get, the more they asterisk smell asterisk. Not like rot, not yet. It's a metallic, coppery smell like old pennies and salt. Your brain registers it before you consciously identify it. A primal survival instinct. I caught it just as we were passing an old patient room. The wall had those old stainless steel inspection mirrors, and in the reflection I saw Marcus's eyes. They were glassy, too bright, almost reflective. He wasn't just seeing the hallway anymore. He saw me looking in the mirror. For a full second neither of us moved. The air just went dead. Then he casually wiped his mouth again. "Almost there," he said, like we had a destination. Like this was just another normal patrol. That's when I understood he wasn't just sick. He was asterisk, delusional asterisk. The infection was already rewiring his brain. This hospital had one last surprise for us. The roof access door wasn't locked. It was welded shut. Thick steel plates were bolted over the frame, the weld marks still shiny and new. Whoever had stripped this place hadn't just wanted to keep people out. They wanted to keep something asterisk in asterisk. Marcus coughed. It was a wet, guttural sound. When he pulled his hand away from his lips, his teeth were stained pink. I had one round left in my pistol, and the worst part, I honestly didn't know if it was for him or for me. Day 3, the safe zone trap. Day 3. The military safe zone on the edge of the city was supposed to be the end of the line for this nightmare. Food, medicine, actual walls separating us from the chaos. That was the promise anyway. But the closer we got, the more that promise started to feel like a lie. The first problem was the silence. There were no guards on the perimeter. No patrols, no spotlights sweeping the tree line. Just a chain-link fence with a crudely written sign that said, *checkpoint ahead*. The gate itself was wide open. No barricades, no sandbags, no Humvees parked for a quick exit. Just empty pavement and the sharp smell of diesel fumes hanging in the still air. Zoe nudged me, her voice a low whisper. "Where is everyone?" I didn't have an answer. My brain was already ticking off the inconsistencies. A military checkpoint without soldiers is just a gate. A safe zone without defenses is just a building. And this place was set up in an old industrial park. Warehouses, loading docks, the kind of place that's perfect for holding supplies and making a stand. Except there were no supplies. I scanned the area. No mountain of MRE crates, no pallets of water jugs, nothing. Just a few scattered duffel bags, most of them ripped open and emptied. That's when I saw them, the bodies. They weren't infected, not torn apart or mauled. Just dead. 2 soldiers in full gear, slumped against the side of a Humvee, rifles still resting in their laps. From a distance, they almost looked like they were just taking a break. But there were no wounds, no blood, they were just gone. Zoe knelt beside one, her fingers carefully checking his dog tags. Dehydration, starvation, maybe. I shook my head, pointing. Take a look at his lips. They were cracked, tinted a faint blue. Their skin had that waxy, preserved look like they'd been dead for days. But the outbreak had only kicked off 72 hours ago. The timeline didn't make any sense. And then it clicked. The missing supplies, the open gate, the dead soldiers who looked like they'd succumbed to something other than violence. This place wasn't overrun by the infected. It had been abandoned. We moved deeper into the complex, stepping over discarded gear. Radios with batteries long dead. Half-empty canteens lying in the dust. On a workbench, a large map of the city was spread out with evacuation routes marked in red pen. Every single one of them had a violent X scrawled through it, and that's when I heard it. A low, rhythmic sputtering sound coming from the largest warehouse. A generator. One of the massive bay doors was pushed slightly ajar, and a faint, flickering light spilled out into the growing darkness. Zoe grabbed my arm, her grip tight. Someone's still here. I really wish that had been true. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of burnt oil. The generator was chugging along on its last fumes, the fuel gauge buried deep in the red. Next to it, a bank of security monitors flickered with nothing but static, all except one. It still had power, displaying a live satellite feed of the city's main bridges. Every single one of them was gone, blown to smithereens. There was no evacuation coming. There were no reinforcements on the way. It wasn't just that these soldiers had been left behind. They had been sealed in with us. Zoe pointed to a clipboard lying on the main console. Check the last log entry. I picked it up. The final entry was dated yesterday. The handwriting was neat but rushed. Command silent. No evac. Rations gone. Water supply contaminated. Holding position until. The sentence just cut off, the pen trailing off into a meaningless scribble. I flipped the page, and my blood ran cold. In the margin, someone had written a single desperate word. Y. And as if on cue, the generator gave a final, shuddering cough and went silent. The lights snapped off. The monitors blinked into darkness, plunging the entire warehouse into absolute blackness. And in that sudden, crushing silence, the final piece of the puzzle slid into place. The safe zone wasn't just empty. It was a trap, a carefully constructed box designed to make people feel safe before the walls closed in. No supplies, no way out, just a false sense of security to lure you in. Zoe clicked on her flashlight, the beam cutting a nervous path through the darkness. Now what? I didn't answer right away. I was too busy listening, because from outside, beyond the thin walls of the warehouse, I could hear a new sound. A faint, rhythmic scratching. The infected weren't supposed to be here. The military radio broadcasts back when they were still working had promised this sector was clear. But the broadcasts had stopped 24 hours ago, and now something was scratching at the chain-link fence. Zoe killed her flashlight, plunging us back into darkness. We need to move now. I agreed, but the question was where. This safe zone was a dead end. The city streets above were a death trap, and the only escape routes, the bridges, were smoking ruins. We were boxed in from every direction, and that's when I remembered the subway. The old tunnels ran right beneath this industrial park, dark, cramped, probably crawling with who knows what. But right now, faced with certain death up here, it was the only play we had left. I did a quick check of my respirator. The filter life indicator reads 70%. Not great, but it might be enough. Might be. Zoe's voice was barely a breath in the dark. You sure about this? No, I wasn't sure at all. But it didn't matter, because outside the fence rattled again, louder this time. And this time it wasn't just scratching. It was the high-pitched shriek of metal starting to tear. *** day for the burning bridge ***. I didn't realize how bad the city had gotten until we hit the bridge. The smoke was so thick it stung my eyes even through the respirator, and the air tasted like burnt plastic. The bridge itself was still standing, but the supports were glowing orange in spots. Some idiot had tried to burn the infected out, and now the whole thing was cooking itself alive. Here's the problem. The bridge was our only way out. The tunnels were collapsing, the roads downtown were gridlocked wrecks, and the river below, it wasn't water anymore. It was a moving carpet of infected. Millions of them packed so tight they looked like a single organism. If we fell, we weren't drowning. We were getting torn apart. Zoe was ahead of me, testing each step before putting weight down. The pavement was buckling from the heat, and every few feet another section of railing was just gone, melted, or knocked into the river. Most apocalypse movies never show this, but fire doesn't just cleanly destroy things. It warps them. Turns solid ground into a minefield of weak spots. I had 1 round left in my sidearm. 1. And the respirator's filter was at 70%, which sounds okay until you're sucking air through what feels like a wet sock. Every breath took more effort, and the smoke was getting worse. That's the thing nobody talks about. Fires don't just burn. They eat oxygen. The longer we stayed on that bridge, the dumber we got from hypoxia. Halfway across, the first scream hit. Not from us, from below. The infected didn't sound human anymore, more like a feedback loop of pain and hunger. The noise rolled up in waves, and that's when I realized they'd seen us. The entire horde was shifting, turning, pressing toward the bridge supports. They couldn't climb, but they didn't need to. All it would take was one critical failure in the steel, and the bridge would drop us right into their hands. Zoe pointed to the far side. The exit ramp was still intact, but the last 50 feet were a straight-up gauntlet. The fire had jumped to a fuel truck, and now the right lane was a wall of flames. We'd have to hug the left edge where the pavement was already sagging. That's when the second problem hit. The bridge wasn't just burning. It was expanding. Metal does that when it heats up, stretches, warps, pushes against itself. I could hear the groans underfoot, like the whole structure was breathing. One wrong shift and the road would snap. We moved fast, but not running. Running meant panic, and panic meant missing the cracks. The heat was insane. I could feel it through my boots. My sidearm was useless now. If I fired, the muzzle flash could ignite something. If I dropped it, the impact might do the same. So I just held it, a dead weight with one hypothetical bullet. The last stretch was the worst. The infected had piled so high below that some of them were close enough to see the way their skin split from dehydration, the way their fingers clawed at nothing. They didn't blink, didn't react to the heat, just stared up, waiting for gravity to do their work. We made it off seconds before the first cable snapped. It whipped back like a broken tendon, slicing through a car still stuck in traffic. The bridge held, but barely. Behind us, downtown was just a black smear against the sky. Ahead, no idea, just open road and the hope that somewhere the fires hadn't reached yet. But here's the thing about hope in an outbreak: it's flammable. And we were carrying ours straight into the burn zone. Day for the fortress. I really thought we'd made it. The offshore fortress was supposed to be the answer. Military-grade walls, stockpiles for months. Everything the broadcasts had promised was waiting for us. Zoe and I had scraped our way here through 3 days of hell. My sidearm had exactly 1 round left in the magazine, and the filter in my respirator was clogging faster than I'd calculated. But that stuff didn't matter once we saw what was waiting inside. The bodies weren't human anymore. Well, not exactly human, but here's what gets me. They weren't the same infected we'd been fighting in the city either. Those things were slow, decomposing, almost predictable once you learned their patterns. These were still moving, but moving wrong, twitching in ways that defied anatomy. Limbs bent at angles that should have shattered bone. And the smell, this wasn't the rot we'd gotten used to. This was something sharp, chemical, like the lab we'd barely escaped from on day 1. Zoe tightened her grip on my arm. They're not eating anyone. She had a point. The city infected ripped into anything warm-blooded. These things just vibrated like they were waiting for something. That's when I noticed the walls. The fortress wasn't just compromised. It was coated in this strange, oily sheen, black veins crawling up the concrete like living circuitry. I brushed my glove against it and the fabric came away sticky. Not blood, not mold, something entirely different, and this is where it gets really unsettling. The soldiers stationed here, they weren't just killed. They were integrated into the structure, not pinned or trapped, more like the building had absorbed them. One guy's arm disappeared halfway into the wall, fingers still twitching in some reflex loop. Zoe's voice dropped to a whisper. This wasn't a quarantine breach. She was dead right. What we'd seen in the city was bad, sure, but it was just phase 1, a distraction. The real event was happening right here, and it wasn't using people as hosts in any traditional sense. It was converting them, turning them into building materials. I checked my sidearm again. 1 bullet, useless against whatever this process was. Then the emergency lights started flickering. Here's something apocalypse movies never show: the way infrastructure dies in stages. Generators don't just quit, they sputter and fail gradually. The fortress's backup lights were still running, but they pulsed like a failing heartbeat, throwing shadows that seemed to move independently. Zoe pointed upward. Look. The black veins weren't confined to the walls anymore. They were spreading upward, threading through the electrical conduits and plumbing. The entire facility was being reconfigured from the inside out. And that's when the realization hit me. We weren't in a fortress anymore. We were standing inside the thing's incubator. The infected in the city weren't the end game. They were delivery vectors, meant to spread the initial infection far enough that nobody could intervene when the real transformation began. And the military's safe zone, it had been ground zero all along. Zoe's respirator chimed its warning, filter at 60%. Mine wasn't far behind. We were facing 2 impossible options: stay here and suffocate when the air systems finally failed, or make a run back through the city with the very creatures we'd barely escaped. But here's the catch. The city wasn't exactly an escape route anymore. The subway tunnels we'd used to get here were unstable, and the streets were filling with smoke from whatever was burning downtown. Even if we made it through, the infected out there were changing too, getting slower, stiffer, like they were just waiting to be absorbed into something larger. I stared at the pulsing veins on the wall again. That's when it clicked. This wasn't a zombie outbreak at all. It was a replacement event. And humanity was never meant to be the final occupants. We were just the construction crew. Next problem. Our respirators had maybe an hour left. And whatever was aerosolizing in this fortress, I definitely didn't want it in my lungs. But the only way out led back through the city. Back toward the thing's initial experiments. Back toward the feeder's asterisk.